Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely flip your perspective on the history of the American landscape. We're diving deep into a lost ecosystem that is honestly almost too wild to believe actually existed. Let me ask you a quick question. When you picture a vast, wide-open landscape, one that's dominated by massive herds of elephants, cheetahs sprinting through the brush, and apex lions roaming together as the ultimate biological killing machines, where exactly comes to mind? Naturally, you're probably picturing the African Serengeti, right? Well, plot twist. We are not talking about Africa at all. We're actually talking about prehistoric America at its absolute coldest point. It was basically Africa on steroids, hidden under a freezing climate that created a wildlife dynamic unlike literally anything we see on Earth today. Here's the quick itinerary for our prehistoric safari today. We'll start by exploring the Ice Age savanna, then meet the giants of the plains, come face-to-face with the Ice Age apex predators, check out some incredibly bizarre and armored beasts, and finally, unpack the double-tap extinction. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Ice Age savanna, which was essentially a frozen megasteppe. You know, it's honestly hard to overstate the sheer scale of the last glacial maximum. We're talking about a period between 26,000 and 20,000 years ago when global temperatures averaged a really chilly 46 degrees Fahrenheit. Ice sheets covered a full 25% of the Earth's land. To put that into perspective, in places like modern-day New York, the ice was actually taller than skyscrapers. Yet, the uncovered lands just south of that ice didn't just turn into some barren, snowy wasteland. No, they transformed into a dry and incredibly vast megasteppe. And what's really wild is that two drastically different environments can actually do the exact same job. Think about the African savanna. It uses drought-resistant grasses and impressive heat. But the American megasteppe, it used cold-resistant spruce trees and herb-dominated grasses in freezing temperatures. Despite the weather, both of these environments served the exact same ecological function, which was attracting and supporting absolute grazing giants. Moving right along to Section 2, Giants of the Plains, focusing on those massive herbivores. Okay, so there were actually three massive bush elephant equivalents roaming this era. Surprisingly, the Columbian mammoth was significantly larger than the famous woolly mammoth. We're talking 12.5 tons, standing nearly 14 feet tall and sporting this coarse golden retriever-colored coat. Now, while the woolly mammoth stayed way up in the extreme north, the American mastodon acted as a sort of prehistoric short king, a stocky 11-ton tank dominating the eastern regions. But the really terrifying reality here is the scale of these beasts. 16 feet. That was the length of a single Columbian mammoth's tusk. And these weren't just tools for digging out snow. Fossil records from Nebraska actually prove these were highly lethal weapons. Paleontologists literally found two mammoths locked in a perpetual duel, having died together after one drove its massive tusk straight through the other's orbital socket. But hey, it wasn't just the mammoths. The plains were packed with supersized versions of familiar faces. Take the giant bison. This thing weighed 2 tons, completely dwarfing the modern Cape buffalo. And its horns, from tip to tip, they were longer than modern NBA players are tall. You also had a giant extinct horse that outweighed most modern giraffes, a stag moose that basically mashed a moose's body with an elk's head, and mountain deer that were more than double the size of the deer you might see wandering your backyard today. And here is a fact that completely shatters what most of us assume. We have this idea that horses were first brought over by European explorers, or that camels strictly belong in Middle Eastern or African deserts. But the evolutionary reality? Both horses and camels originally evolved and thrived right here in Ice Age North America before they ever expanded out to the rest of the world. Mind-blowing, right? So, with all that meat walking around, let's jump into Section 3, Ice Age apex predators, the true biological killing machines. Imagine a life-or-death encounter with the American lion. This apex predator was 25% larger than the lions we have today, weighing up to 1,000 pounds. Fossil evidence shows they were literally capable of amputating a direwolf's leg in a single bite. Then you've got the Smilodon, the classic saber-tooth, heavily built, massive limb thickness, specifically designed to pin down prey and deliver rapid, catastrophic kills. And don't forget the American cheetah, which is this fascinating case of parallel evolution, combining spotted cheetah looks with the ambush hunting style of a cougar. But even the saber-tooth wasn't the undisputed king. The true heavyweight weighed in at an estimated 1.2 tons. Enter the short-faced bear. This absolute monster stood 11 feet tall on its hind legs. It was so massive and powerful that researchers believe it secured meals simply by walking up to other apex predators and stealing their kills through sheer intimidation. Rounding out the carnivores, we have the prolific direwolves. Now, forget the fantasy television versions you've seen. The real direwolves were about 25% heavier than modern gray wolves. They were built incredibly compact and muscular, with bone-crushing bites that functioned almost like modern hyenas. And honestly, that immense jaw strength was absolutely necessary to take down the heavily armored prey wandering those plains. Let's pivot a bit and look at Section 4, Bizarre and Armored Beasts. Specifically, we're talking about the South American imports. Consider this absolute tank of a creature, the Glyptotherium. This was an 8,800-pound armadillo that functioned basically like a mammalian ankylosaur. It was the size of a bear, rocking heavy head-to-tail armor. Because, when you're a grazing giant built like a literal walking bunker, you barely even need any offensive capabilities to survive all those terrifying predators we just talked about. But if you thought that was weird, wait until we talk about the towering ground sloths. If you're picturing those slow, cute little guys hanging from trees today, you gotta completely erase that image. The smallest of the bunch, the megalonyx, was the size of a medium walrus. The Erematherium and Megatherium were the size of Asian elephants, weighing up to 4.5 tons. When they stood on their hind legs, they were towering, 20-foot-tall pillars wielding monster claws that were actually powerful enough to burrow straight through solid rock. Which brings us to our final stop, Section 5, the double-tap extinction, and the mystery of a vanished world. So how does a bustling, oversized American Serengeti literally just disappear in what is basically a geological blink of an eye? Well, the prevailing mystery is best explained by what researchers call a double-tap event. First, you have highly adept human arrivals known as Paleo-Indians, specifically the advanced Clovis culture, crossing over the Bering Land Bridge. They brought sophisticated weaponry and put massive hunting pressure on the megafauna. But then, that pressure was suddenly compounded by a second devastating blow, the Younger Dryas. This was an abrupt, chaotic climate whiplash of extreme cooling, immediately followed by dramatic warming. It completely shattered the fragile balance of the ecosystem and took the giants down with it. It really is just mind-blowing to think about. As the quote goes, North America today has nothing on its past. So the next time you step outside and look out at a quiet, modern field, I want you to seriously ask yourself, what other massive secrets and completely lost prehistoric ecosystems might still be buried right beneath our feet? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope it completely changed how you see the world around you.